Right now it is time to welcome in, once again, Brian Ross with Real News. Brian joins us on a Thursday morning, and, we just have to scratch and really look hard to find things to talk about in the news.
I'll say, let's start with the vaccine anxiety. With the remarkable developments yesterday with the head of the CDC, Dr. Redfield, saying the vaccine won't be generally widely available till probably the middle of next year, early summer. And then the president contradicting him, saying he was mistaken. And since that time, Dr. Redfield has sort of failed to clarify his comments, not accepting the president's criticism.
I saw that on the news yesterday, and what stood out to me was a comment I heard from somebody from the Department of Defense who said that, listen, you're talking about when the vaccine is approved, you're talking about vaccinating 320 million Americans. That's just Americans. He said, now you have to imagine these vaccines have to be transported in special containers to keep them at a special, really cold temperature. He said, you have to understand the logistics. And anybody who knows the military, if there's one thing the military is really good at, it's moving things from point A to point B. They really are superior at that. And he said, it will take months upon months to move this vaccine when it's finally produced and distributed to distribution sites to get it to 320 million Americans.
And that's if there's only one dose needed. There could be two doses, which would be double.
Yeah, it's so, and the whole thing about trying to use the vaccine as an election ploy is that the anti-vaccination crowd, which is growing in the world and this country, it gives them more leverage to say, well, we're not going to really trust the vaccine. It's so bad on so many different ways. And then you're right, for the president to say that his appointed head of the CDC didn't understand the question.
He understood it perfectly, yeah. And the new CBS poll showing that at least a fifth of Americans would be very worried about taking the vaccine because of the fact that it appears to be rushed and the president's making it so political. This is like just an amazingly awful development, it seems to me, because the vaccine, of course, would be a godsend. But to have it rushed and raise questions about its safety and efficacy, which the president is doing by the way he's treating this, is just a disaster. Marshall, I think that should he be reelected, he'll likely be impeached again.
It's what is going on here is truly amazing. Now, if it weren't a political year, maybe it wouldn't have happened. But woulda, coulda, shoulda gets you nowhere. And really, the faith in holding a democracy together is faith in that your government really is trying to protect you.
And I think that's not the case here. We've seen with the Woodward tapes of Mr. Trump and 16 other accounts from inside the White House, just what a charlatan he really has been. And and I think what he's finding is, of course, that his appeals to law and order have not worked, have not moved his election polls, and his only hope is to get a vaccine out by the end of October, he says. And they can begin to use it within 24 hours. So what Dr. Redfield had to say yesterday was extremely important and very sane and very sobering, and the president clearly didn't like it because it doesn't help him at all.
And what was great about Redfield saying this yesterday, on top of that, he held up his mask, and he says, right now, this is the most important thing, right here. This mask, right now, it's more important than the vaccinations. It's more important than everything because it's been shown in areas like New York and other areas when things were out of control. The two things that brought things back under control were social distancing and wearing a mask. And he couldn't have been any more dramatic in trying to point that out yesterday.
Without a doubt, and it's clear masks work. That should give us great comfort. I think more and more people, certainly around here, Marshall, I think we must be at 95% compliance. You go anywhere in our area, and people are wearing masks. I had to drop down to New York for an hour or two earlier this week, and I would say 95% of the people there on the street are wearing masks.
Yeah, so that stands alone. But then another story that came out, which was also released by the military folks. It came from a general that in that White House standoff where the protesters were pushed away, so the president could march across the street. Trump wanted the military to use this device they have, which is, they call it a heat ray. But what it does is it makes it so hot so that you have to scatter. And the military flatly said no.
Yeah, but the idea that we're stocking up ammo and this sci-fi weapon to go after Americans in the nation's capital is truly revealing. I think most Americans are stunned by what they've been seeing, and I think, frankly, I don't know if you watched the president's town hall on ABC with George Stephanopoulos the other night, but not that many Americans watched it. 4 million. I think it reflects that, one, we're sick and tired of this guy, and two, that most minds at this point are probably made up, and we're all going to wait until that debate, just 2 weeks away, for anything that's going to move the needle.
And then and this is the long range thinking. When you think about election day, normally you tune in on election night and you plan to stay up to about 10:30, 11:30 to get all the results. And this year, what's going to exacerbate the problem even more between supporters of Mr. Trump and non-supporters of Mr. Trump is we probably will not have a decisive conclusion, a winner, just because of the amount of mail-in ballots that are going to be coming in.
We don't know, but I think, as John Carl was pointing out the other day from ABC, if he loses Florida, it's over anyway. There's no pathway for him to win, and so a couple of key states going for or against him could be decisive. And of course, our concern of anybody is, given what he said, that the only way he would lose is if the election is rigged. Yeah. What happens next in terms of the Justice Department bringing lawsuits, challenging results? As you say, we're in for a very rocky November and probably December if there is a close election.
And it even goes to where the head of the Health and Human Services puts a live rant on, talking really about sedition, about insurrection, and about basically an all-out civil war. He's now taken a leave of absence, but you can't write this stuff up for a movie script and think that people will believe it.
Well, going back to our beginning conversation, he was brought in as the head of communications for the Health and Human Services to help prepare Americans to have credibility and belief in the vaccination. And here he is talking about people, get your ammo ready. This could be rough. There are hit squads out there, assassins. The man who's off his rocker is taking a 60-day medical leave for some undiagnosed problem. But you can imagine what the problem is.
But then you add that on top of the fact that the head of NOAA has been appointed, and the head of NOAA is a non-climate change believer. Now that's neither here nor there with me. But once again, the head of NOAA is not a scientist. It's staggering to sit here and look at this and just say to yourself, man, this is just what I'm witnessing at 67 is unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
This is a historic year, without a doubt. We will talk about it for a long time, for years to come. And it strikes me that I don't get quite the Trump campaign strategy, if there is one. None of this seems to be cutting in his favor. There are lots of advantages for an incumbent to do things that would help him. But I don't, other than staging the convention on the White House lawn, I don't see what he's doing that helps his cause.
Well, that's the scary thing. And I when I sit in the back of my mind, and I think to myself, okay, well, what he's doing is he's really solidifying his 35 to 40% of people that will vote for him, and that will do just about anything for him. And then if he's hoping for a close election to win, and if he doesn't win, he's going to use that 35 to 40% to really go out and strike out. That's what scares me.
Well, if he wins, I think he'll be impeached, and if he loses, he'll be back on Fox News or some other network, and unlike other former presidents, will be campaigning again for 2024. We're not through with him by any means. He's not going anywhere. No. I think that he has set up a rationale for himself that if he loses, it's because they stole the election, and he can campaign on that. But it really is a stunning development, and you wonder what's going on in his mind if he's even thinking through all this. Who are his advisors? What are they saying to him? That base, they believe in him, and they like a man, I think it's pretty clear, who just, speaks his mind, says what he thinks, that's it. They don't care. They don't really care so much about the substance. They just like the idea that he's outspoken and that he's against all those smarty pants. That's how I think his supporters see him, and there's a handful who see him as good for the economy. But even that has not propelled him past his very sort of stuck at 42% job approval level.
All right. Well, Brian, we'll see how things develop over the next week or two, and we'll speak to you next week. Thanks, as always, for joining us.
Great to be here, as always, Marshall.
Brian Ross and Real News here on Robin Hood Radio.